Hi, I'm Amy Waterman, a transplant psychologist and the creator of the Explore Transplant Education program.
And I'm Matt, a kidney patient. This is my wife, Jackie.
Thank you both so much for being here. I think it's important that we work together when it's time to make important health decisions. I know a lot about kidney disease and transplant, but you know the most about what is best for you. And Jackie, thank you for making the time to be here today. We always want a family member or a friend to come to appointments. We need you to listen, to take notes, and to help with decision making. Sometimes someone decides to be tested as a donor, but not always.
I know, I wanted to see if I could be his donor, but I didn't match, so I help him in a lot of other ways.
I know it's really important to be an advocate for myself.
So you've had the time to go through the Explore Transplant program?
Yes, we both have. We've both watched the videos.
Great, so now it's up to Matt to choose what steps are right for him and for Jackie and I to support him.
I really want to make a plan today.
As you watch the final video, think about which actions are right for you, Matt. So now let's watch Deciding What to Do.
There is no one right answer about whether to get a transplant. Every patient must make a personal decision that is right for him or her.
Dialysis was, in my head, it's great, and I appreciate dialysis, but what is the next step?
We didn't have any idea about the kidneys, that they do kidney transplants or anything. So his kidney doctor told him that, there's a kidney transplant that you could probably get and look into. So he gave us all the information to look it up, and, we did, and we found the hospital, and we looked it up and got all the information.
Oh, well, if you want to get the information, the place you would start would be with your nephrologist that's attending to you.
And you also need to involve your own family, because those you live with, those others that love you, are affected by this process as well. And it's not just your decision alone. It really is everybody's decision.
The counselor at the hospital that did the transplant did a great job of educating me on the process.
Well, so what I'm hearing you say that people can call to get information without being committed to being a donor.
Absolutely.
And they can talk to somebody like you?
Mm-hmm. They can ask what's involved and how do I know if I can be a kidney donor or not, because people with certain diseases can't be a kidney donor.
The transplant team and the coordinators are phenomenal, but just some of the best people are just people that have had the surgery, because there's just a commonality there. They live with it every day, both pre and post. But really it's like, hey, when I get out, whether you're the donor or the recipient, what does the rest of my life look like?
Questions that I will ask people that they will come into my life with transplants, it was what kind of medications are you taking, the side effects of the medications, was it painful? That's one of the things. The recovery time, what was the recovery time for you? How do you feel?
What do you say to the patients who find that transplant isn't for them?
To answer your question, I like to quote the famous Greek philosopher Kenny Rogers, okay? You gotta know when to hold them and you gotta know when to fold them. And I think if somebody strongly believes that they're doing well on dialysis and they, at this point in their life, they don't wanna hear about transplantation, it's time to take a step back and say, whenever you feel like and it's right for you, let me know. Okay? Here is all the information for you. We're always here for you if you want to talk about it.
The best way to educate yourself or to get some information about dialysis, and you want to talk to the nursing or the dialysis staff, just ask them basic questions. What do I have to go through? How will I feel? And let them explain, give you some insight. But then also what I always would recommend is talk to someone that's been through it. I talk to different people in different environments. But okay, maybe this works good for you. Okay, maybe that works good for you. I remember seeing a man that had a tube sticking out of his abdomen on a cruise ship, loving life, 72-year-old man, loving life.
I would say I felt like I was a lot sicker when I had a catheter than when I have a fistula. And I definitely felt at that point like I had to be a lot more cautious about everything I did at any point, just because of having that catheter in my chest. So I think for me it was a really, really big step to get a fistula. And once I did that like my comfortability factor went up huge.
I had the surgery for peritoneal dialysis, and I went back to work, and I was very lucky. They let me do the dialysis at work.
When I prepare a little snack, I make my snack, and you have your TV. So you kind of put on your favorite TV shows, and you have your snack, and you just wait there until it's all done and make the best of it as possible.
I'm going to go here every day, and I'm going to show everyone that you can bring a laptop, you can do work, you can read a book, you can write your own book. But, you know, the most important thing was just fellowshipping with each other and maintaining the support within the group there.
Fluid intake has been the hardest thing for, I think, any dialysis patient to do. And for me, I found a water bottle that when I drink out of it makes me personally feel like I'm getting a really, really big quantity of water. But the reality is I'm only getting a couple ounces.
I understand it gets frustrating and you want to eat things that you are not able to, but the bottom line is if you go outside the lines there and you do eat the things that you're told not to, you're ultimately going to end up feeling bad.
Now that I'm been on dialysis, I'm able to participate and take care of the household chores and pick up the kids from school. And so now I cook dinner and everything for my wife, and so I'm Mr. Mom now.
I come home, I have dinner made, I have, towels washed, folded, put away, the house is clean. He's picking up the children, my granddaughter and my daughter, from school, making sure that homework is done. And it's just so much better because I don't have to worry about him anymore.
My life has been full, and now that my kidney has now failed, and I'm back on dialysis, I'm still living my life to the fullest. I don't stop it. I still play softball twice a week during softball season. I do everything that I need to do. Only thing I have to do is make adjustments along the way. I still travel. I still do all these things that I did when I wasn't on dialysis because I'm alive.
The lady that lives across the street from me, right after she retired, came down with kidney disease. And she's doing dialysis now, and it is just like I was, miserably sick. Spends the day in bed. She used to walk too. We used to walk together. And now she walks with a cane and spends most of her time in bed. And I just kept talking to her about her quality of life. And she is now on the list waiting for a transplant.
The evaluation for the transplant takes a long time. It's not that you're going to make a phone call and it's going to be there for you. You're going to be put on the list. No, it takes a long time. So I always said, even if you do not want a transplant, get involved into the evaluation, get involved with the transplant, because in that period of time, it's about a year for you to get on the waiting list. So in that time, you might change your mind, and then you might decide to have a transplant, but you have saved a lot of time.
What you have to do is go through a transplant evaluation, have blood work, EKGs, cardiac stress tests, chest x-rays, a number of things to make sure that you're healthy enough to undergo the surgery and that it will benefit you in the long term so that you can live many, many years. The main thing that has to be done, though, is that each patient has to be responsible for his own health at this point. That patient has to call. That patient needs to make sure that everything is proceeding. Each patient needs to be his own advocate.
You should definitely have people on your team, on your side. And I have a list of 5 or 6 people, and there's some people that are on my transplant team for that. When I get a kidney, they're on the list to where they know where I am all the time. They're around me. They're one of my 2 or 3 best friends. So that if the transplant office can't call me, they call one of my best friends who's going to know where I am.
After your evaluation is complete and you've been accepted as a transplant candidate, you should receive a phone call from your transplant coordinator and a letter from the transplant center telling you that you are on the transplant list.
How do you How do you expect anyone to say, I'll be your donor?
You talk to your doctors, you talk to the nurses, you talk to the social workers, and they say, well, who are your friends? Who is your family? Who do you work with? Do you go to a church? You start talking to anybody and everybody that you can think of. They said most people have 100 or 200 people that they have contact with. So they said, I would suggest that you start talking to those 100 or 200 people.
Talking to my mother about being a donor, just more letting her know that I would do that, and that there was no pressure from her, and that I was a willing volunteer to go through the process.
What should we do? Is there any way else we can help? And I don't know if it was myself or anybody else that brought, hey, why don't we just see if any of us are a match? So I guess that time we told our dad that, hey, I think we should just go ahead and see if we can, if one of us are a match, just in case.
One person was not a match, and she has since moved to another state. And the second one, it actually worked out as beyond a blessing. She went to get tested, and in the process of getting tested, they found a lump on her breast. So she is ineligible to give me a kidney at the moment.
We called the phone number, we had the initial blood test done, and we found out that there were 4 or 5 of us that were actually matches, which is fantastic, and it was great news to hear. And then we came together and we had a family meeting.
When my father actually spoke at the beginning too, he had become very emotional and cried. Well, my dad, like me, doesn't cry. We don't cry. But he did. And that really got to me because he when he cried, I guess maybe I just thought to myself, these people really, really want to help me. They really do. I mean, I've been in all my life trying to help people myself, my family members. They want to help me. And I've got to let them do it.
You have to tell your story. You have to be willing to tell your story. Your friends want to know your story. They want to know what's going on with you. And you may not know it, but they may be sitting there thinking, gee, I wish there was something I could do.
I was sharing my story with people, or that others were sharing my story with others. I felt it was really important because everyone needs to be aware of what their bodies are telling them.
When I was first told by her mother that, she was going to need a kidney, I knew right away I would test. I didn't know much about being a living donor and as far as matching, being a match, being a non-blood relative, but I knew I would at least test, and if there was any possibility, I would be willing to do it.
I was still kind of reluctant, and I was still kind of scared to go to my family and say, would you mind donating a kidney to me,
And he told us that the doctor had said that he needed to talk with us about living donation.
I asked the question just like the doctor was asked the question. Doctor want to know, will you give me a kidney?
We had no idea. We didn't fathom that there was a way to even be able to bring him back to health.
I thought they knew about it, I thought, well, I know about it, so they got to know about it. And but a lot of times we, assume a whole lot of things that it's not so.
After a number of conversations and thoughts, I started thinking maybe I should ask Brian. An adage I sort of kept living by, and that being the most he can do is say no. So I called him and saying, hey, can I come over? I got something to talk to you about. And so I remember driving up and getting out of the car and pacing out in front before I rang the doorbell.
He and Kim were standing on the front porch, and Barb and I were also on the front porch, and he just really brought up the question of kidney donation.
It was a life-altering question to ask, no doubt. Very nervous, but I needed to ask the question.
Well, I just remember him talking about how his kidney was failing and that he was going to have to go on dialysis, and it was time to actually think about a transplant. Our families had lived with Barry's kidney disease for 30 years. And I knew that at some point it would probably come down to the point where he would either go on dialysis and or want to have a transplant. And I always thought I was a candidate to be a donor. I would have been disappointed had he not asked.
Your existence has a value in this community. I want you to build up on that value. You can be great help to others by being healthy.
There's so many people out there with kidney disease, and there are more people out there than I ever thought. And there are more people who have donated than I ever realized. And I only found this out through going through the process myself. And once I was exposed to this, I can't tell you how many times just through casual conversation I've met someone who either is on dialysis, who has donated an organ, or has been the recipient of an organ. And it's something that is very prevalent in our community, and it's something that a lot of us can do something about.
Oh, please explore the option. You have the right to say no, but go to the meetings, find out what's involved.
I think the biggest thing I would say is that don't let the fear of failure prevent you from doing it. There's risk associated with it, certainly. There's risk associated with anything.
I think I made definitely a decision that has been positive for me, and I still think I have more options if I decide to change what I want to do.
It's been a really good experience for me, and they're learning more and more. The techniques are getting better every day, and the process is getting simpler every day, and you ought to consider it.
It makes you feel good as a person, knowing that you helped someone. That's how I feel. I feel great in doing it. It made me feel very good in doing it. Like I said, I would do it again.
The gift I got from this whole process is life. Having life and being able to live it with no limits.
This video showed patients taking a lot of different actions. Now it's time to go through the guide, deciding what to do about your kidney disease together. This isn't just a brochure about facts. Matt, this is the guide you wanted to help you make the plan. So every patient is different. And at the end of the program, some patients decide that they want to keep thinking about kidney disease and transplant more. That's the blue part of this brochure. Some patients think about what's important to them, imagine their life on each treatment, talk through options with people they trust, and visit websites.
We read and talked a lot already. I visited many of these websites. It was all really helpful.
Are there any steps that you want to take now?
Imagine your life with each treatment. What would my life be like if I started or stayed on dialysis? For me, a life on dialysis would be more challenging. It seems like it would be restrictive. What would my life be like with a transplant from a deceased donor? The waiting time would be a factor for that. What would my life be like with a transplant from a living donor? I would prefer a living donor transplant. It might afford me more freedom. I'd be able to choose when I'm able to have the surgery.
And we'd be able to plan our lives a little bit better.
Okay, so based on that, let's look at the steps in the orange part of the guide that relate to getting listed and getting a living donor transplant. Great, so let's look at starting the process for a transplant. So there's a bunch of different steps you can take. So let's see where you are on the journey. So have you found and called a transplant center near you?
We've done that.
Okay, great, so you can check that one off. Okay, have you filled out the forms mailed to you by the transplant center?
We haven't done that yet.
Okay, so that's your first step, I think. Mm-hmm. Now, let's look down here at getting the word out about your need for a kidney. So who do you think you'd want to get your word out to? You could talk to your family, your friends, your coworkers or classmates, your faith or community leaders, anybody else?
I think family and friends.
Okay, so let's check those off here. And I'd probably talk between the two of you and figure out who are the actual people that you want to talk to, because often there's so many people who care about you. And how would you invite others to talk?
I think with a phone call.
Okay, great. And then when do you think would be a good time to bring it up? Some people do it in a big social gathering. Some people do it one-on-one over a meal or coffee.
I think I'd prefer to do it over a meal or coffee.
Okay, great. So now, at this point, when people think about that they do want to get the word out, they have to decide if they want to do it, my patients like you, Matt, or if they want to allow someone else to share their story and their interest in living donor transplant. So what do you think's right for you?
I think I'd be open to having other people get the word out.
Okay. So then, who would that be?
Well, I think my own family.
Okay.
I can help. I can help you get the word out about wanting a living donor. Why don't I make a few calls for you to let people just know what's going on with your health?
Okay, I like that.
So remember, not everyone decides to get a transplant or a living donor transplant. There's a lot of steps here to follow if someone wants to stay on dialysis or just get on the deceased donor waiting list.
I know that patients can make dialysis better by following the diet and exercise plan that their healthcare team suggests, completing their full dialysis treatment, and taking their medicines.
One of our friends is staying on dialysis now. She just doesn't feel comfortable pursuing transplant yet.
There's no pressure to ever get a transplant. She has to decide that her life would be better with one. If she's doing fine on dialysis, great.
This is really helpful. I'm glad I made this plan.
I'm so happy for both of you. So congratulations on finishing the Explore Transplant video series. Thank you so much for taking the time to make an informed treatment choice.
We both wish you good luck.
And good health.